Hi there, come on in. It is Thursday night, December 2nd, 2004. I'm Zachary Trost, and it's the first week of the annual pledge drive for public TV, which is why this program will be preempted on a lot of stations. We're going to make up for that next week with 90 minutes of Big Buck Night. On this program, we have stories about a partially albino deer, some odd antlers you don't often see. We have a home video of bucks in the winter. We have some tips on calling deer. Taxidermist Tim Hayes can explain how to skin out a deer for mounting, and we have a special recipe from a special friend, Brett St. Pierre. Fred will be back in a moment with the features, so stay tuned.
From the rugged shores and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fishery. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around, my friend, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you all their beauty in the state of Michigan.
The most unusual thing about this white-tailed deer is not its Roman nose. No, that's unusual enough, but look at the coloration on this deer. It's mainly white. Bob Pullman got this deer, and I assume you hunt deer because you like to eat deer too, don't you, Bob?
Yes.
Oftentimes white-tailed deer that have at least partial albinism are totally white. They don't have spots like this, do they, Glenn?
No, a true albino, 100% albino is pure white, and then the eyes are pink, and the ears are pink, and the nose is pink. So this isn't a full albino, it's a partial albino.
Okay, about what percent is it? You had to check that at Michigan State. Dr. Sikarsky, the vet?
Yes, he told me it was 80%.
Of course, you can see it has the normal color eyes, but what about its nose? Did he say anything about that? It does have a distinct shape on its nose.
He said on albinos they're deformed in several different ways, and the nose, he said, is more rounded than normal. And also on the back feet, there's two lumps there right down by the hoofs there, where he says very unusual, and there's one on that one, identical one on the inside of the other leg. And he couldn't understand why they were like that, because they're not on normal deer.
Just the antlers, this is about a what, 5-point?
5-point.
Missing a matching tine on this side, but it's an unusual deer. You ever seen anything like this, Glenn?
I've never seen one spotted like this. I've seen various levels of albinism, but never where it occurred in spots like this. This looks almost like an Appaloosa. No, I've never seen one spotted like this.
Not too many albino animals in the wild.
No, the albino color is an aberration. It's a lack of a gene that maintains color in the fur or the feathers, and albinos simply don't survive as well, apparently because they're more visible. And so they're easier for predators to eliminate, and so that gene for the lack of gene for color is not a trait that's passed on.
Well, it might be linked with other deformities like its nose. Maybe it has some other problems albinos have that shorten their life.
Well, typically albinos do have other characteristics besides colors. You pointed out the nose. Often albino deer are partial crippled. There's something wrong with their legs. So albinism usually is associated with other body irregularities.
Well, Bob Pullman, you were hunting where?
Eaton Rapids.
Okay, and this is, of course, the second part of the bow season. No snow. Would have been maybe tougher to see with snow.
Yeah, with snow, I think it'd been pretty difficult to see, and when I did spot it, it was running up through the brush, and it was kind of dark brush, so it showed up real well.
Did you notice it was walking in a crippled manner or anything?
No, when I spotted it, it was running.
Oh. A running shot with the bow?
It was running right at me, and I was a little bit nervous when I seen it. I made a little noise, and it stopped 25 yards in front of me and stood there and looked at me.
Did you make that noise on purpose?
No, I was shocked.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, you used, it looks like on your bow here. Let's see that bow. Looks like you have a game tracker on here. The string?
Yes, I used the game tracker at the time, and without it, I don't believe I would have found it.
How far did it run?
It went about 250 yards, and I had approximately 125 yards of string out.
I'll be darned. Well, that's A success story here with a game tracker, an unusual deer. Unusual deer. Do you know if any other albino... Well, hold it, there was another albino.
Yes, I
taken.
believe there was this season another albino taken.
Another partial albino deer, but it wasn't spotted. Bob, we're going to take a look right now at our trophy report at that deer and some others. Hey, thanks for coming on. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And here's that other partial albino deer that's really more traditional, at least for partial albinos. Large amounts of white, but not ticked like Rob Pullman's. This is a doe, and hunter Tom Tryon from Clio said the same thing Rob Pullman did when he first saw it. He thought it was a goat. But this mutation in color came from Iosco County.
What we have is a couple deer here in the velvet. Now, when you find a buck in Michigan, especially in November, well, you got one with a bow October 2nd, and then November 15th, Stan got this one in the velvet. There's usually an odd story behind it. Joe Weisenbach from Siebewing. What's the story on this little antlered what?
I seen him come out, and
No, I got to correct you. You saw her come out.
There was another doe with it.
Yes, this.
Yeah.
Let's get right to the point, Joe. This is a doe,
Yep.
antler.
Yep.
A doe with antlers, an aberration of nature. I mean, she apparently didn't try to rub it off, which would indicate that it doesn't itch. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Because she just had no instinct to rub that off. That's a doe with antlers, and that was taken Huron County. And you're from Siebewing, Joe Weisenbach. Now, this year, you're outdone. I'm not kidding. Stan Phil from Standish got a 6-point. Now, this has 13.5-inch spread. Like, who cares? That's not the story. The story is, go ahead, Stan, you say it.
Not much of a story.
No. Tell me about what was attached to this deer when you checked to find out what it was.
Well, it's a perfect 6-point.
Get to the other end.
He had the little thing, but he didn't have the testicle to back it up.
Okay. Well put. Stan, you're a politician. That's right. This was sort of a buck.
Well, I think he was going for a sex change, but I think he kind of flubbed up a little bit.
Oh, he did. He did. So here we are. This is...
I think he's a kind of a awkward thing anyway, because when he fell, he broke this point, and he broke his back leg at the same time. It wasn't shot.
What we're going to have to do, I'm sorry, Stan, is these people are going to have to draw their own conclusions. Huh? This deer really didn't have it.
That's right.
Okay. In fact, this deer and this doe...
It was kind of uncoordinated.
Yes, the whole thing. But it's interesting to see deer in velvet. It's not natural at this time of year, and these deer definitely weren't natural. Mike Reynolds entered this one because it was a 14-point, but look at the statistics on this. Oh, knock you out. 10-inch spread, longest tine, 2.5 inches. Wow. Wow, weird. Mike, you're from Davison. You got with a bow.
Right.
When you saw this guy walking through, did you count the points?
Well, I really didn't have time. He walked in, I seen him from the side,
Oh, like that.
and I thought it was a real monster. Then after I got him down, I said, I didn't shoot that. But that's what it is.
I'll be darned. Oh, how we got to ask on this show? How was the plumbing on this one? Was it okay? I mean,
Oh, everything was fine on it.
everything was fine. It just has
It was all there.
Any idea how old it was?
No idea.
Well, I'll tell you. That is very strange, but I think it's neat to see that. Get a load of this deer herd. The winter of 1993, a couple of bucks still sparring. The two bucks stopped fighting, and amateur cameraman Doug Bigos was surprised at what walked into the frame. Neither of these two bucks wanted to get serious with this big boy. They were outclassed. Maybe you can count the points on this bruiser. It looked to us like it was a 12-point or mighty close. He's really interested in that licking branch that's along the trail. If there wasn't snow on the ground, you'd see a scrape under this licking branch. A lot of hunters think that deer only use their scrapes during the fall. But actually, these licking branches above the scrapes are used by bucks and does year-round. If Doug was in this tree with his video camera in May, and this buck came down this field edge, he'd probably videotape the same behavior, a quick check of the licking branch. This tape also shows a significant phase of deer behavior, one that is unique to winter and late summer, the herding up of deer when they feed. You don't see groups like this during hunting season when bucks are chasing does, and you don't see groups like this in the spring when does are raising their young fawns. This time of year, though, December, is not yet the time to see big groups of deer either. Isn't this footage colossal? Doug must have been awfully excited to be right above such a big buck, and not just one buck. There's another one a few feet away that's already lost one antler. January and February are when most antlers are shed, and they usually lose both antlers within a short time, often within hours. If you have a sharp eye, you can find shed antlers in the snow or in the spring after the snow melts. The big buck is under the tree. The one antlered buck is nearby, along with a 6-point that's wandering with this group. Doug must have been hanging off a limb to get these shots. He turns the camera sideways to catch a spike buck. That's buck number 4 near the base of this tree. Finally, the big one spooks, and we're left with the memories of some exciting moments thanks to Doug Bigos from Gregory and his Practical Sportsman home video. It wasn't until the late 1980s that hunters began realizing the fact that deer can be called. The deer's ears are huge, with 5 times the surface area of a human's ear, and they respond to a variety of noises, especially during mating season, which is when we hunt deer. One noise a buck makes when he's trailing a doe is a low-pitched grunt. Did you hear that? Let's listen again. Now, you can duplicate the grunting of a buck with a grunt tube or a grunt call. My favorite is this little plastic one with a slide on it to vary the pitch. Instead of blowing this call, I inhale, pulling the air over the reed like this. Now, that's the sound of a buck. Push the slide halfway down, and you get the sound of a doe. And all the way down if you want to imitate the high-pitched sound of a fawn calling for its mother. Now, the most effective call you're going to want to use if you're hunting bucks is that deep-pitched grunt of a buck as he approaches a doe in heat. Now, this call can attract another buck. Now, the buck isn't coming because he's attracted to a grunting buck. He's coming because he's attracted to the doe that he figures is nearby, a doe in heat. So he's actually looking for that doe, and it's the noise of the buck that tells him that the hot doe is in the area. Just a few little grunts are needed. Don't overdo it. You don't use a grunt call like a duck call. You use it sparingly. Now, if a buck, say, is walking away from you and you want to stop him, give him a couple of subdued grunts. Oftentimes, that buck will turn around, come back to investigate. That's how to use a grunt call. Now, another technique for calling is called rattling. And to rattle, you use a pair of antlers and click them together to imitate 2 bucks fighting, like this. Now, before hunting season in September, you'll often see bucks sparring. They're not fighting, they're just goofing around, testing their strength, seeing who's dominant. But during hunting season, there's generally just one reason that bucks fight, and that's because both of them want to mate with a doe that's standing nearby. Now, little bucks don't fight, only the more dominant breeding bucks that are 3 to 5 years old. They generally have big racks, big bodies, they're strong, and they really go at it in the battle. Here's some home video taken by Dick Giacino from Big Rapids that shows you the intensity of a mid-November battle between bucks. Amazing footage, isn't it? Well, now I'm going to tell you some 3 very important things if you're going to try rattling. Now, first, you have to realize you're imitating the fight of 2 big, dominant bucks, and the only deer that will come to investigate is another buck that considers himself to be a dominant breeding buck. Smaller bucks and does will run when they hear antlers clashing because they don't want anything to do with a fight, and rattling will scare them off. That big breeding buck will come in, though, looking for the doe he thinks is standing and watching the fight. So, don't rattle unless you're hunting for big bucks only. Secondly, don't rattle constantly. You want to rattle in a way that imitates bucks fighting. Then you pause a little bit. Click a couple times again. Now you can enhance this by thumping the ground thrashing some branches, but after about 20 or 30 seconds, you want to stop for at least 5 minutes, and now comes principle number 3. When you're rattling, a buck can pinpoint where you're sitting by the sound, and as he comes in, his eyes will be open, the ears will be moving. If he catches you moving and rattling, well, he'll slip away, you'll never know he was there. So after 30 seconds of rattling, pick up your bow or gun and get ready. Be still, let the buck make the move. All the motion that you do while you're rattling can ruin the tactic if a buck sees you. Now, does rattling really work? Well, these rattling antlers here were sent to me by Dwayne Fink of Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, up in Canada. He got this buck by rattling. Now here's a picture of Dwayne with another buck he rattled in, and his hunting buddy, Dr. Bruce Rudkin, rattled in this buck up in Alberta. Those bucks were taken in 1993, so rattling does work. Once again, the principles of grunting or rattling. Realize you're catering to the big bucks, the breeding bucks. For the most part, smaller bucks and does will usually run when they hear grunting or rattling. Secondly, use grunting and rattling sparingly. And thirdly, after 30 seconds or so, get ready. Don't get caught moving. Those are the basic principles for using the practical tactics of calling deer. Now, will they work for you in the late season? Maybe. Most of the does have already been bred, and the breeding bucks are looking for the last of the hot does. That's why rattling and grunting just might work for you in the late season. If you're looking at the art of taxidermy in deer mounts, you can see, well, here's 3 mounts in Tim Hayes' taxidermy shop here at the Practical Sportsman Museum. They all have something in common, the way they're cut down to the shoulder. I don't know if you notice what it is, despite the pose, but compare it with this one, which was mounted in 1935. Tim is going to do a recape on this, but look at where the neck is cut. This looks like the deer is sticking its head through the wall, compared to Jason Parmiter's buck here that we have on the set, all the way down to the shoulders. Now, Tim Hayes, being a taxidermist taking in deer heads at this time of year, I know you go nuts with some of the problems that people bring you.
See a lot of misused deer.
Now, I was always taught, as I read the magazines when I was a kid, that what you want to do is cut the hide down the back of the head and take it to your taxidermist, skin it out, sort of help them a little bit.
Right, that's the old method of doing deer heads. Anymore, we like to do what we call a no-sew, where you actually skin the deer, peel the skin down like you were removing a sock, and then the only incision that is made in the actual deer head itself is right on top of the head.
So you don't have, of course, that cutting up the neck. That's what deer processors do.
Deer processors love to cut all the way down the front. It makes it a really fast, easy skin job for them, but it makes for a terrible sew job on
and then you have a seam up there that can open up.
Right. I mean, you get cut hairs. It's almost impossible to re-sew that and hide it.
Now these modern mounts they're down into the shoulders here. Where would, just say you had to cut your deer in half or take the top part to you, the taxidermist. Where on the deer, how much hide would you want to leave?
I like to, if you have too much hide, you can always cut it off. Mm-hmm. So I always like to go back in well behind the front leg.
Behind the front leg?
Behind the front leg.
And I bet most people want to cut it in front.
Yes, most cut it here or somewhere up too far where they're going back then to a neck mount rather than a nice full shoulder.
Yeah, it gives you the 1935 look.
Right.
Now, one last thing, what about salt?
Salt's bad news for immediate work on a deer. It draws the moisture out of the skin itself, and then you've got a wet skin. That's where bacteria starts to form. That's where you have hair loss and slippage. And
so what do you do?
Just get it in the freezer.
So what somebody wants to do to bring a deer to you is preferably bring the whole thing and let you skin it, then take it to the processor. Make sure they have enough hide on it. Don't salt it. Keep it frozen if possible, and let you do that skinning work.
Right.
Makes it a lot easier.
The more I do for them, the better job they're going to get.
And you won't end up with one of these jobs that looks like it was done in 1935. Now, we're going to end this program with the ultimate reward of hunting, and that's food we gather from the wild. This recipe is a special one because it features actually 2 great friends of the Practical Sportsman who have passed away during the past year, the chef, Brett St. Pierre, and a judge of our cooking contests, John McKenzie of Coyle's Restaurant in Houghton Lake. This recipe is in memory of them. Brett St. Pierre from Ypsilanti is preparing what looks like an enchilada or burrito, but it's called spicy whitetail roll-ups. Not only does Brett know how to prepare a dish to tickle the palate, but he also knows how to garnish and decorate it so it looks elegant. Almost looks too good to eat, doesn't it?
A few years ago, I was on the show, and I have to say this, Morton F. gigged me because I had some tame turkey in my recipe. 90% of this is grown right here in Michigan. The deer's from Langsburg. The peppers are from Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. Most of it, if I lose this, it's not going to be because it's tame anything. So.
Okay, well that's good, but it's kind of spicy, huh?
It's quite deceiving the way it looks. It doesn't taste like it looks.
There's so many things to weigh here, you know. The one presenter is so much prettier than the other one. But then again, she picked a bad name.
A bad name?
Trost, so. No, I'm just teasing. Actually, I had to vote for the whitetail roll-up. Spicy, a lot of flavor bursting through, but not hot spicy, just enough to get your interest and keep you going.
Well, here we go again. They were both equally great, but I've just got one thing to say, and that is that Trost roast on toast is not the most, and I'm going to go with spicy whitetail roll-ups.